Hey everyone, it's your girl Courtney Arlesia, and today I'm joined by Micole Williams, an award-winning filmmaker, author, speaker, and storyteller whose work explores faith, purpose, and the power of authentic storytelling. Through books, films, journalism, and community-centered work, Micole has dedicated her career to helping people share their stories and discover the value of their own voices. Most recently, she is the creator of the documentary How Do You Hear God, a project that invites viewers into meaningful conversations about faith, spiritual connection, and personal testimony. Micole, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to learn more about your journey, talk more about how do you hear from God, and share the stories that continue to shape your purpose.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm happy to be here. And then
Yeah.
and then I say this now. My
hmm
actual name is Micole. I'm a
Miko.
yes,
Okay.
I should have probably
No, it's
so
okay. It's
it's so
okay.
funny. I have a dance for it. I'm like, you point to
hmm
yourself, me and your cole.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that. So prior to y'all, me and Miko were connecting, and I was telling her that my youngest niece, the only other McCole that I know is my youngest niece because I named her. So, but spelled the exact same way.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
and see, that's why you have to ask clarity for people's names. I think that's very important because it can be spelled a certain way and a whole pronounced totally
Yes,
different. So, well,
exactly.
thank you, Miko Williams. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I was introduced to you through your documentary, How Do You Hear God, which is a very, very powerful documentary. I really enjoyed it. And we will get into that conversation a little later today. But you're a writer, a filmmaker, a journalist, an author, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And so tell me how you got into all of these things. What sparked your love for storytelling? How'd you get here?
Oh, well, thank you. I think it is basically something that really stems from my roots. I actually probably got that innately, I would say. I
Mhm.
think we all are creatives one way or another, but mine just came in the form of telling stories. And I think some part of it came from being from Texas, Houston, Texas specifically. But I have family who also stem from, like, on my maternal side, roots in Longview, Texas. And I think my first excited audience member was actually my great grandfather, believe it or not. He's like 90 something years old when I'm 3 years old. And he is visiting from Longview, and it's a story in Longview about me because he got so excited about some story that I told him when I was 3. I opened up my latest book that my mom probably was reading me a
Mhm.
story from, and I don't remember this. Of course, a lot of people don't remember what they're doing at 3, but the story has it, or legend has it, whenever I go to Longview, people are like,
Mhm.
oh man, granddaddy is what we called him, even though he was a lot of things for everybody. But they were like, yeah, granddaddy used to tell us about you. And he would come back, he would go to Longview and say,
Mhm.
he is smart. And he's talking about me because I had this little bitty afro, and my mom sometimes
Oh.
did not deal with it. She sometimes was like, I just couldn't deal with your hair. I just had to let it be free some days. And she would dress me in, clothes that were more primary colors. So she didn't really do the pink and the purple. She was like, sometimes you would see me like that. So he's up here saying I'm a genius and all of this stuff reading at 3, but I honestly probably wasn't doing that. I just might have been remixing the story that they probably
Right,
told
right.
me. I'm assuming,
Yeah,
right? I'm
right,
probably
yeah.
giving him an original. I don't know. But
Yeah.
that just tells me that it's not so much something I kind of wanted, but it was something I was given. And that
Yeah.
would, whatever you're doing at 3, you probably, that is really who you are. So
Yeah.
yeah, that I would say it comes from just that, but it also comes outside of being innate. I think it is the environment you're in. So I grew up in a
Mhm.
house full of educators. I was in a single parent home. My dad died really early, but even before that, that wasn't, my upbringing. I had my mom. She was a business teacher at that time, and she's still in education to this day after retirement. And then my grandmother was still alive at that time, and she was a retired school teacher, elementary specifically. So she kind of ran her house like it was a school, like an after school program or something.
Mhm.
So they let me just explore, especially during the summers. I remember just having free reign, and I would just get lost
Mhm.
in all the stories that were around the house, whether it be my grandmother's periodicals for days, because she didn't throw anything away. So she got the Houston Post, the Houston Chronicle, and whatever else that could be thrown to the house back then.
Mhm,
And then my
mhm.
mom would have these, her college books. I would get into those because they were kind of low on the shelf. And then her magazines would always get me. So like Essence magazine, Ebony. So I just was really an avid reader. And I think that really added to that feeling of not only do I want to tell stories, because that's a tradition in our family on that side,
Yeah.
but I want to write them. I didn't know people could write
Mhm.
them. I want to be a part of that tribe. So I think it started very, very early.
Yeah, and so as you were talking to, what was coming up to mind was like, oh, it sounds like she's walking in her purpose. Like when you spoke about it being innate and it being inside of you, that's your gift was already showing itself at a very, very early age. And so do you feel like you struggled to get to this point, like where you have become a writer, a filmmaker, and all of these things? And have had success in it? Like, do you feel like, there was a time where you didn't do any of this at all, or you had to revisit it, or you ran from it?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's always a struggle whenever um, maybe you have an inkling of what your purpose is.
Hmm.
There's always a fight. There's always a fight. Because another story is, it's funny you're asking me this. I have a cousin, and they used to, I don't remember these things, but they used to say we literally would physically fight because I would be like so into my own world, and he wanted to
Hmm.
play, and we would be going on trips, and we're in the back seat, and they had to pull over and basically separate us because it was that early enough a physical fight. So I
Hmm.
look at it like, even to this day, there's always something that is an obstacle, or maybe a person who may
Yeah.
not understand. Let the person do what they got to do.
Yeah.
I think being an only child for so long, I kind of found a way to entertain myself when, you know, I was a very active kid, like most kids, but you don't have people around you that are your age. So you have to find ways to, just kind of get through the week.
Right.
And
Right.
so, to answer your question, I have dealt with so many things that make me want to stop being a
Hmm.
creative. But I think
Hmm.
I have to go back to, if this is something that brings me so much joy, and if this is a way that I can communicate and process, first, it's a process thing, right? Just to be
Hmm.
able to understand yourself more. I've learned that writing does that for me. So, when I had a journal, a diary is what we used to call it back in the day, I
Yeah.
still have that
Hmm.
practice because
Yeah.
it's just not for anybody, but it's just for me to be able to understand what is happening in the world around me, but also happening within me. So I think obstacles have come in the form more so with not knowing anybody who's done it professionally that I can cling to and say, can you be a mentor per se for a long range of time? I've met some people along the way that have been just so invaluable with the information that they've given me. But I've also had to research and learn the hard way and try
Yeah.
by trial and error and hope for the best. And I feel like sometimes that is unfortunate because it takes you a longer time to get where you want to go. But then again,
Hmm.
you kind of tried and true. So it's like, it's okay, that I had
Yeah.
to go this ziggy zag way around where I just wanted to have a straight shot. But some of us are not nepotism babies, nepo babies.
Yeah.
Some of us are
Yeah.
not trust fund babies. Some of us are just feeling alone on the journey, but it kind of makes for an interesting journey too. So where there's
Yeah.
obstacles, I think that, yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
They're
And
there.
there was something that you just said too, because mentioning about creatives, or being a creative, right? And so when you said that, I was thinking to myself, but God is also a creative, and so there's a special um purpose that creatives have, and like other people may not understand it, and other people may not value it as much, but like God is also a storyteller, even in our path and even in the things that we choose or the decisions we make, especially if we have a relationship with God, we get to experience him in a whole different way. And so, okay, we're about to have a good conversation, Micole. Okay, so faith is like including all that you do and everything that you produce and share with the world. Faith is woven into it. So, how does your faith with God and your relationship with God influence you and your career and the things that you create and share with the world?
I mean, you hit it right on the nail, because when you bring it back to the creator
Mm-hmm.
of creatives, you just have to give God the credit he deserves, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're here. Nothing's original in regards to what we do, but we are hoping to, in his likeness, and as much as we can, mimic the idea of taking authority over the visions that we have and trying to carry them out. And that's what art is for. So if we're
Mm-hmm.
extensions of him, if we believe that to be so, he is running through us and giving us visions, and he's making a way out of what sometimes feels like no way when it comes down
Yeah.
to being a creative. So I love that you said that, because I think that has been, people think I'm joking with this, but I've always, especially when I started back filmmaking, because it is a faith walk, I believe. I
Mm-hmm.
started back
Mm-hmm.
filmmaking in 2022 after a hiatus, a 10-year hiatus. And when I say I have won an award for like best web series pilot at Beyond
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood International Film Festival. And this is after really not really knowing that any of that stuff could happen,
Mm-hmm.
especially because of how hard it is to be a filmmaker at times, especially independently and even through commercial aspects. When I got on stage, I remember saying that God was my business partner, and you could hear
Mm-hmm.
chuckles here and
Yeah.
there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny, it wasn't a joke. I
She
heard
was
it.
for real, yeah. Like seriously.
Like, yeah, but in environments like that, sometimes that is, kind of quizzical for people, and a little whimsical, like, no, that, is that a buzzword? It's not, because I
Yeah.
know that that project, 365 Days in LA, was the project that I was there for. And with it winning, every part of that, from pre-production, production, and post-production, and then getting it out, distributed into the world, all of it was a faith walk. And just
Mm-hmm.
walking to that stage to accept that, I just knew that he wanted that to happen, because it's so many obstacles. Your dream can die on the vine in so many ways
Yeah.
during all of those stages. So just to get it through, that was enough for me. So anything that really gets finished is
Mm,
icing on the cake, I would say. So anything that
mhm,
comes after that is just like a blessing. Like even like interviews like this, it's like I'm
mhm.
so grateful for you to meet you through Joseph, which is one of the cast members, an amazing guy, and just to know that you watched it, how do you hear God, and enjoyed it. And it really it means a lot. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about how do you hear God a little bit more. And shout out to Joseph Ivy. I was going to mention him too because he's in the documentary and he's the one who shared it with me. And so he always has very, very good recommendations and also always shows a lot of love. So shout out to him.
Yeah.
But documentary completely amazing. And before I start asking all the questions about the documentary, what inspired you to create How Do You Hear God? And what season of your life do you feel like you were in when you were creating this project?
That's a good question. I think with every project, it can be so unique as to the inception of it. And that project, to me, I don't know if I knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Some projects I go in knowing a lot more about aspects of it. And that one was more like me saying to God, I'm in a season of, I'm not too happy with the world around me. The world at large was very disappointed to me around 2024. The end of that year, I needed some inspiration. I had gone through the film that I mentioned earlier, 365 Days of It in LA, had done well in a number of ways as far as like the film festival circuit, which I was like, okay. And then it also got to be on cable TV, a network on
Okay.
cable
Awesome.
television. And so I just know that that was something I had spoke into existence at a private screening. So with this project, I don't know if I had it in me to go through that hustle and bustle of what I experienced that year. Even though some things were very natural, I also, like I said, don't have a mentor per se to kind of
Mhm.
give me the ins and outs of this is what you're gonna probably run into when people want it on television. There are different specs that you'll have to deal with, and it's a lot of stuff that you only can learn when you're in that situation. And the more
Mhm.
experience you have, luckily I was coming out of California, and I was coming from a job that I worked as a TV associate producer, so I was also getting my chops back up in that way, seeing how things could be done. But every network is different too, so
Yeah.
I was so blessed to have that experience of seeing something that was just maybe a way of celebrating a year in Los
Mm.
Angeles. I was like, God, what do I do? You kept me here a year. I was only going to be here 3 months, and you extended it
Mhm.
out to a year. So that project was spiritual in its own self.
Mhm.
But when I got into when I returned back to Houston, I kind of didn't know where I was going to be for the next couple of years. And in fact, I came and I talk about why I returned to Houston a year and a half later. I touch on it in the documentary, right? So when How Do You Hear God comes around, How Do You Hear God is not a thought just yet. It's more of knowing that I'm asking myself, what is it that would make me feel better about, let's just say it, the election.
Mm.
I wasn't really feeling comfortable about so many aspects post, well, really before it happened and then post election. I was really
Yeah.
sad about what that meant for so many people who look like me.
Yeah.
Was apprehensive about the future. I think being a creative, a lot of times you're hypersensitive. And so you don't just
Mhm.
worry about yourself, you worry about a lot of people outside of that, right? And
Yeah.
so my thing was, I kind of was just tapping out a bit, honestly.
Mhm.
And I was like, what can I do to keep my spirits up? And I remember meeting somebody in particular at the State of Black Learning Conference. It was a group of
Mhm.
people that we just kind of gelled together. We were all speakers. And this is the summer of 2023. And so come around a year later, one person in particular was retiring out of the
Mhm.
government type job. She was a researcher. And we kept in touch that whole year off and on for different reasons. And she's older than me. And remember, I'm a person always seeking wisdom and mentorships. Anybody
Mhm.
who knows something about something, I'm always like, I want to hold on to that person throughout my
Yeah.
life. And I remember contacting her and just saying, how are you doing? What's going on with you? Here's what's happening on my end. And I kind of asked her for some advice on some things and what's to come. What do you think is to come with, where we're going in this in America actually? And she was like, of course, she can't say too much. And she's not in the government space right now. But
Mhm.
wisdom is wisdom. So we talked about a
Right.
couple of different things. And one of the things I shared with her that was on my heart was I was like, I feel like God is wanting me to continue to create
Mhm.
at my own pace, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And I said, I almost feel like he wants me to buy equipment and just do projects that I want to do that aren't going to have me, rally too many troops, but more so just at my leisure. I have my own equipment, so I can just go out. I don't have to rent anything. I don't have to, you know, interview a lot of people. I have what I need to just make art. And she's like, that's kind of cool that you feel that way. And I think you need to um, validate your thoughts, if that makes sense. And so it was just something like that where it first start with the stance of what season am I in? I need an outlet that
Yeah.
doesn't involve too many people. And I don't want a lot of I don't want a lot of fuss over it. So I kind of was taking it from that standpoint. And so I started buying equipment in October 2024, and I got it. Well, maybe before that, and I got it, the next month. A lot of stuff was coming in. And so it was just really personal, honestly. And what I said to myself, this is how do you hear God comes about. I was like, okay, well, I got equipment now. Now, what projects do I do? Because I always got a bunch of projects, but which one is the most feasible for the time that we're in? And that was what was weird because it was one that I was talking to a local filmmaker about, and he was like, yeah, I'm on board. Let's do it.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a documentary, it was like a fiction or a narrative film. And it was gonna be
Mhm.
what it was gonna be, but it was gonna take way more than us two. And I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know if that's really what I want to do, but he was already signed on. And so the next thing was, I was like, you know what? Let me work this out. This equipment is new. I know how to work different equipment, but this
Yeah.
equipment is not what I'm used to. So let me get
Yeah.
acclimated before I start stepping back out there. And that's just the type of person I am. I don't want to, just step out any kind of way and half step. So I said, what is going to be an easier thing? And it's going to be a documentary. A documentary, you can station your camera, and it's just a little bit more of a, once it's set up, you can sit back and get your questions out and get the answers. And I knew I could handle that. So I was like, what is pressing right now? And it was the storms. I had endured, it's crazy. It's like I had gone on vacation, and then I came back to Houston with family only to endure Hurricane Beryl. And that,
Mhm.
when I say I'm a Christian who cusses, I cussed that storm out because it was a hot mess. And I'm not gonna say it on your program what I said, but when it happened, I was like, Hurricane Beryl is a mess. And
Mhm.
thinking that might be, since I wasn't the only one furious with what was going on in the aftermath. And a lot of times I take myself out of the project, if that makes sense. I was like, let me find people who have had different experiences. Let me do that. But I couldn't find them. It was so many people talking online about the storm, but when it really came down to the outreach that I had, it just wasn't going anywhere. So I was like, okay, that is not the route. Let me just do something different. What's going to be my best thing? And so it turns out when I prayed about it, I said, God, whatever project is next, let me offer it up to you.
Mhm.
I want whatever the project is to be an offering, because this is the first time I'm working on this equipment and this is a new era. And all of a sudden, there goes that idea. How do you hear God? I was like, what
Yeah.
questions do I really talk to people about? What do we end up talking about? And it's always those conversations about faith that really resonate with me. And
Mhm.
it could be that we're not even trying to talk about it, but it ends up being the question
Mhm.
that I want to hear more answers to. So that's really kind of what happened. So after, I want to say, knowing late October that the other items weren't working, that November start and having it go into production just that fast and finding people who were interested and wanting to talk about it or apprehensive, but I said, pray
Mhm.
about it. Don't worry about it. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay. When I say it moved and it never stopped and it just kept rolling, and the people that needed to be there, they found their way there. And that to me was like, okay, this is your project. Do what you will with it. And I think he did that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned too how you can talk about God all day long, or that's how I feel too. I can talk about God all day long, especially with my friends or people that I'm getting to know, or even like a stranger. I feel like, when you have faith in common, you can tell, and that conversation can go on and on. And so I love that question, and then that also that something that you enjoy led you to this documentary. And it's a really, really good documentary. And I realized that there's so many different people from all different backgrounds, and they have all different perspectives. Oh, I love like watching the names come up and then their profession that they're in and like what they do. And I think it just shows how God is, how his children
Mhm.
are come from all different backgrounds, and they look different, and they represent different things. And so why was it important for you to create a space for a wide range of testimonies and for a diverse group of conversation and people to share their stories?
Thank you for that appreciation of those things. I think it just goes right back to what we know God or our God to be. And he
Mm-hmm.
is not a monolithic figure. So I think also just having a journalism background, I was more so welcoming God. I can say that word, but maybe on the receiving end, I may get something different when people start talking about those three letters put together. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I always value in life is pulling from various sources to really have one thing, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think even when you look at my company's name, that's very intentional. Eclectically You Experience.
Mm-hmm.
Eclectic is you are not one thing. You are pulling from so many different sources in order to make something else. So I started um I just say because of the name, I started as a jewelry maker,
Mm-hmm.
college. That's a hobby that made money. And it was I had my business name Eclectically You Accessories. But I did
Mm-hmm.
not want to lose that as a person who was becoming a young adult. I was like,
Yeah.
I pull from so many things in life. And I think when you're not judgmental, but you just allow yourself to agree to disagree, or allow yourself to be a listening ear, or allow yourself to be neutral in the sense of for this project, I'm going to serve as a journalist. It doesn't matter what I think, but I'm here to hear
Mm-hmm.
what you think. I think that came in handy. And so it was very important to um, have the democracy of what these people could say and show that
Mm-hmm.
you could have a voice. I'm not just trying to hear from people who think of themselves as an expert, or maybe they are a theologian who, preaches from the pulpit and they want to share their sermon, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're a person who has doubt and they don't look at themselves. I'm not in that vocation, but I am struggling right now with my faith, but I had
Mm-hmm.
it. Or maybe it's a person who has faith and they are not in the business of faith, but they have something to share about it. I think each of those stories really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger
Mm-hmm.
picture is how we find ourselves. We find our own truth that way. So the more we hear about how you can tackle a subject, the more real it becomes for us, and we see our own identity. So it's been
Yeah.
really cool hearing, different ways that people can say, you know what, the girl with the pink lipstick, I really love what she said about
Yeah.
this. I
Yeah.
was I can agree. I don't know if I can agree with what she said about this, but and that's the kind of conversations that's been happening after people watch it. People are really finding their own voices,
Yeah. Yeah.
their
I
own
feel
take.
like Yeah, I feel like what you're saying too is something that I take pride into as being a creator, and also as being a woman of God, is creating things that people can see themselves in. So when people read my work, or if people watch an interview, or even the questions that I ask during my interview, I want people to feel seen, like whoever's watching it is receiving this, that they feel seen, that they feel understood. And so I think that also goes back to this being purpose work, and God being a creator. And so if you are a creator, then you are also adding to his purpose and to his kingdom in some way and form. And even when you think about, this also being created from a place of needing an outlet
Mhm.
because of
Mhm.
what's happening around us, and what's our truth.
Mhm.
It made me also think about how creators are also advocates. And so in the work that we create, we are telling a story that people can relate to and feel seen, and we need that. And so something else that you just mentioned was how people are watching the documentary and they're finding a testimony that they're connecting to, and they're like, oh, that really resonates with me, and they're sharing more about their story. What's funny about that is there was something that you said, there was a quote that you said, and I don't have the exact quote, but you were talking about, because you narrated a little bit throughout the documentary, and you talked about how in life and your church experience came with anxiety and church hurt, and you just had all these different experiences, and I was like, yeah, felt that, and so how do you hear from God? Like, what experience have you eh, that have shaped your relationship and your conversation and how you hear from God?
And thank you for being who you are as a journalist as well. And the mirror part, I can really relate to that in the sense of that's the role of a journalist, to hold up a mirror to what society
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at it from this standpoint, before I started the project, at first I wasn't going to put myself in there. And then I was like, closer to it, some of the journalism that I love the most have more of a human interest element to it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think to answer your question, two different things happen. If you're going to tell the truth, tell the whole truth. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I was battling with, if I am going to show that they're talking about religion, I'm asking them questions about it, then maybe I do need to, as the documentarian, just share a little bit about, I have to answer the questions too, right?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
felt like when it comes to religion, when it comes to faith, when it comes to spirituality, I know that I had this positive aspect to it, but I also had the struggles, and I also had to understand why. Why was I having that struggle? So when speaking about the church hurt, the pictures are showing one thing, but it's just always that balanced idea of, you can
Yeah.
have a great church family, you can have a
Mm-hmm.
great church experience, but who makes up the church?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're the human body, if we're
Mm-hmm.
that, we are
Mm-hmm.
flawed. We come
Mm-hmm.
in as we are. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have a mixture of things every
Yeah.
Sunday. And so I guess it was just a matter of, once that's said, I had to deal with, where am I now with that? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Where am I now? And I just had to come to terms with, as much effort as I put into one aspect of something, if I keep running into something that keeps me from the real purpose of, then maybe there's an adjustment that can be made and a perspective that can be changed on my end. And that's what the documentary actually taught me, because I kind
Yeah.
of started seeing a pattern with what they were sharing. And I noticed just in my mind, when I'm sitting back watching it myself or listening to the interviews happen, I was like, it's interesting that nobody stayed at the same place. So if they
Mm-hmm.
started
Mm-hmm.
off here, and maybe they allowed themselves to explore along the way, which makes it
Mm-hmm.
yours. And then maybe as an adult, they're somewhere else in their own faith walk, right? Or their faith journey. And so it was only maybe one or two people, I feel, that had the same start and the same end. And so for me, I felt the same way. I'm like, I
Yeah.
started here, and maybe that's okay. So I think it's a revelation to self. Like, when you're really trying to tackle a subject as a journalist, if you're really trying to grapple with things as a human, you're going to have a lot of questions along the way. So as
Yeah.
long as I'm asking that question and getting answers, and then processing what the answers are and what feels right and what is to be right based on whatever doctrine, whatever um, edicts, whatever rules that I'm going off of, then
Mm-hmm.
that's you making it yours. That's you really committing to your faith, spirituality, religion. And
Mm-hmm.
see, that's another thing that I kind of noticed
Mm-hmm.
with the documentary. I'm like, is it really about religion, or is it really
Yeah.
about faith?
Yeah.
And it's that for so many reviews that we've gotten, it just makes me want to go right back in and do
Yeah.
part two to add those
Yeah.
questions in.
Yeah.
I
So
hope
what
I,
I hear
I
you,
hope I answered your question. I don't.
yeah, no, but because no, what I hear you saying is that almost like you're hearing from God as you're creating more. You know what I mean? Like, so the more you create, the more you produce, the more questions you ask, the more you hear from God. And now you're going to create more. And so I feel like people, as a creator, I can recognize that and understand that. People who may not really be connected to the creator side of them, they may not understand that because we go beyond the surface. We live
Right,
beyond the surface.
right.
And so as you were talking, I was like, oh, she hears God as she's creating, like,
Mhm.
and she's able to create more just from that. So I feel like you may have talked about that in a documentary, or maybe I heard that as I was like on your Instagram.
Mhm.
But I feel like I remember you saying something to the nature of like, um, you know, creating is how you talk to God. Like that's how you receive God. Like when you're writing or when
Yes,
you're journaling.
yes.
I believe that was in the
Yeah.
documentary. Yeah, yeah. So no, I love that. I feel like that was a beautiful answer. And so it also made me think about um there was a moment where one of the women that you were interviewing, she mentioned about like her growing up and singing in church, and you asked her what she's singing, and as then you skip over it. Like you skip over it, it's the documentary hops to another piece, it cuts to something else. And so it's almost like, okay, so is she gonna sing? Like what's she gonna do? And then the way you incorporate, like she sings and then you incorporate it, and I think that's such a powerful testimony. I think
Mhm.
that was beautifully edited into the film and documentary, and I think it speaks volumes. So I wonder too, do you have a particular story or testimony that's your favorite, even
Mm.
after it has ended? And it could
Oh,
be all of them too, because they were good.
thank you. And I knew I didn't answer your question all the way. I knew it was some, but yes, the writing part definitely is and through books, just in general
Mm-hmm.
through books, definitely. To answer your question earlier, that's how I hear him. And then yes, spring forth from that, you can create from writing. Words are powerful and all that good stuff. When it comes to saying who's a favorite, you know what? I think all of them were my favorite just because they showed up and they delivered
Mm-hmm.
even better than what I thought. Because, like I said, people knew on the pretense of Micole is testing out her equipment. That, and I'm so real. I will tell you that. And
Yeah.
she's not going to waste a moment. Like she's very frugal. So if she time
Mm-hmm.
money is one thing she doesn't waste, and time. She's not gonna waste your
Mm-hmm.
time and she's not gonna waste your money. So I told everybody, I want to get acclimated so I can, really, really continue. But one of the things that I was really blessed with, and it was just so great to be able to sit back and hear them. Because some people I did a screener with, and they were more the people who were going to serve as a spiritual um, leaders, experts, the people that are in
Mm-hmm.
the ministry. We talked
Mm-hmm.
prior to, but all the others, because there was about five of them, but all the others, I let it be. I've heard them speak about their faith. I know that this is
Yeah.
something that's important to them based on how we know each other or based on what they present online. So I'm going to kind of just be able to let that be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But when I tell you, I think me being a storyteller, my favorite were the ones where I could let the camera roll, and it wasn't so much a back and forth conversation.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to go in and have the question and then have the answer, the question and
Yeah.
then have the
Yeah.
answer. But then I feel like the storyteller and me, the girl with Houston, Texas roots, but East Texas roots, I'm always going to fall for the one that lets me go on a journey in a story. And I was like, oh my God, I got that. You did that.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
something like that where I was like, they took me on the story. Like I was able to sit back for a little bit and be like, did he just reveal that? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, now it's my responsibility to handle that with care because
Yeah.
he laid it out there. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm not showing any of their emotion in that
Mm-hmm.
moment because I'm in a whole different zone of let the journalism hat stay on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the back of my mind, I'm like, wow, I didn't
Yeah.
know that. And then I'm also hearing the Holy Spirit speak to me about people are really sharing. They know you're testing out your equipment, but
Yeah.
they're really letting you have a piece of them for others to be able to take their testimony. So it was really
Hmm.
kind of like starting to be a lot more of a responsibility as I was
Yeah.
listening more and more. I'm like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Funny that you say the word responsibility because we've talked a lot about being creatives and being storytellers. And so I was going to ask you next, what responsibility do you think that storytellers have when they are creating work that touches on faith and identity and personal experiences? Just like, because you were just speaking about, like, okay, someone shares their story with me and that's deep. Now, how do I handle it with care and how do I tell their story? I even feel like as a writer, because I am a writer that will I've been writing since I was 12 because it helps me process, it helps me move through whatever situation I'm having, right? So I may have an experience in life and I may write about it. And if I decide that I want to share about it, I'm also considering, okay, if this person was to read this, how would they feel about my story too? Like just handling everything with intention and
Yeah.
care. So what responsibility do you feel like storytellers have?
Oh my God. So much, so much. You have to really come from a place of care for one, and allowing the space to be read as a place of care, a safe space. But I think it also comes back to the purpose of whatever the project is.
Mm-hmm.
With this one, I can say I am going to put on my journalism hat, but I also am going to put on my human hat. And if I have 14 people that are, you know, sharing stories from their soul, I have to look at, I have to look ahead and think about what would they be proud to see, because
Mm-hmm.
they say way more than what we see in the film. But then I also have to look at and say, what is important to share, not so much from a preference point, but
Right.
what meets the goal of what the question is. How do you hear God?
Yeah.
So I kind of know that prayer means so much with stuff like this, and
Mhm.
waiting to get confirmation from a higher power is important, because this is their life on frame. This is their story on frame, and it's
Yeah.
nothing to take lightly, and
Mhm.
especially with the subject matter. So also an aspect of research has to come in too.
Yeah.
And I made a point to say this is not a textbook documentary that you're going to see played at a school. I'm not going to cover all the different religions out there known to man. That's not
Mhm.
important for me this time. Maybe the next person can do that and they can play it as a resource for students or people who are going into the ministry. I said, God, bring me people who want to talk about this subject from a human perspective, and that's that. So I just kept asking myself from that standpoint. Nobody really saw their work until it was a finished project, and some people are
Mhm.
like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like one of my
Yeah.
good friends, she was like, I don't even want to see it until I trust you. And see, when you
Yeah.
say that, I don't take that lightly. I just go
Yeah.
back and make sure that I'm doing things that can be trusted. And that's very
Yeah.
important to me. So just keeping the respect across the board, having respect for people who show up,
Mhm.
having respect for their voice, how different
Mhm.
it can be from the next person to the next or whoever's watching. Because some people who have watched it are agnostic and atheist.
Mhm.
And they're not,
Mhm.
and some people have watched it look at God in different ways. And I love that some people touched on that. God is not going to just be looked at in this one way. But you are coming from a place of, I'm speaking about the God I know and the God I
Right.
accept. And as long as that was the case, if I had to edit something out because it got away from God, I did that. So we just try to stay on course with what the project was about, what the mission is. And like I said, I didn't edit anything that I felt I didn't get confirmation about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that you are reminding us to be respectful in our craft, to be intentional in our craft, to include our higher power in all that we do so that we are not moving forward without them, And so I
Yeah.
think that's very powerful. And like you said, prayer is important. I pray like right before I get to doing anything, is inviting God in so that you can be intentional about that and that you can make sure that you're making the right decisions too. And when someone tells you that they trust you, that does matter too. But I also feel like as a creator too, is I don't want to share it with you until I'm done because I want you gonna have to trust me because once I get to edit it and do it too stuff, it's like okay, now you mess with my creativity and so it can get tricky, right? But I love that when people just go ahead and offer you and let you know that that's what it is. I trust you. So tell me, what are you hoping that people um receive from How Do You Hear From God, and then all of your projects in general, like when you are creating and sharing with the world, what are you hoping people receive from you?
Well, how do you hear God? I think that I'm at peace with however people receive it, in the sense of like there it's open to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have that question continue to be one that gets to be answered on film more.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I've made a list of people who I feel I would like to hear them speak on this subject matter in Los Angeles. And so since
Mm-hmm.
this one was filmed in Houston, my other home away from home is one area that I would like to hear from a community there. And then another place, see, I go online for church now.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the fellowship is not there, and that's just something I've had to just kind of deal with. And I'm fine right now with it because God knows I tried. I
Yeah.
tried. I will go visit a church and I will join a church, but
Yeah.
we know in the documentary what I talk about. And so what I've noticed about me, with the exception of one preacher, I listen to a lot of people in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So Atlanta is also a location I would like to open this conversation up to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one thing that a lot of people shared at the screening, especially in Houston. They were specifically wondering what city would be next. And so I just think if it can, to me, it was just an offering. So I
Yeah.
honestly got what I needed out of it. I got more than what I wanted out of it, actually. So I'm not as picky as some people. Like, I can't tell you, like, here's where we're going to be with,
Yeah.
my goals with the film. I'm kind of on to the next in my head. You know what I mean? But I do want to keep the conversation going because I think it's in a form like a communion kind of
Yeah.
deal. And so if I know that through writing, that's always been my way of connecting with him through books. This to me seems like it's allowing me for like this pocket in film to have something that is in that same vein, and it keeps it very authentic for me. And what was your second question? I know you were saying what do I want out of how do you hear God?
Yeah.
It's something next.
Yeah. So in all of your projects in general, well, what are you hoping people gain from your projects in general? Yeah.
And so I would say I love hearing that people are now looking at their own faith and just having that time to think. I think that's beautiful that you're like, because you saw the film, you're like, it made
Mm-hmm.
me evaluate where my relationship is with him, with God, with my creator, with a higher power. That's beautiful. I think that is a gift within itself. And so if that keeps happening, that's what I would like to have
Yeah.
happen. Right now, people can rent it on like my website. I was very cautious about because it could have been a streaming option, but
Yeah.
I kind of left all the hustle bustle alone for this project because I don't want it to become two feelings of commercial. I kind of would battle with that. Like, do I go
Yeah.
the commercial traditional route or do I just get it out there? Because at first it was just going to play at a church and that was going to be it. But I do feel like the message, it would be nice if it continues to be that people can have that moment of asking themselves that. Now, with the other two films and upcoming films, I feel like with 365 Days in LA, I'm glad that people have chosen life I'm glad that people look at that like, okay, if I'm going through something, I'm going to fight for my life. You know what I'm saying? Versus it being that it's just something that like you're just existing. That one was a little different. And I feel like if people can leave with more self exploration and
Mm-hmm.
more of a stance that they're taking, that my life is that important to fight for. One one thing that stood out to me, I never thought about it that way, but somebody was watching it and they were like, I know some people that were going through suicide ideation, and it helped
Mm-hmm.
them to value their life more. And that, to me, those type of things, I just kind of am like, wow, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't about that at all, but it is some vein of that theme, that core message of life is a gift, it's precious, it's worth you saying, what is it that I want to do right now? Let me do this before it's too
Yeah.
late. So when
Yeah.
you're met with the thought of death, some people kind of charge up better. And then
Yeah.
Tangled Web of True Love Tales was my first film that I did 2010, before all the easier routes to get it out to people were around. And I just look at it like it's a good laugh. It's a good I screened all of these films as an anniversary gift to myself
Mm-hmm.
in November, right before my birthday. And I didn't tie it to my birthday, but it was just my own personal thing of, girl,
Yeah.
you finish projects. And that's
Yeah.
big because you've been on a lot of projects that people didn't finish. And it's like,
Yeah.
dang, I wanted to see that make it to the finish line. But if God is a finisher and he's helping you finish your projects, there's nothing light about it. So when the audience looked at that one, it was good to see some of the members of the cast, because that was a narrative. All the two that I mentioned earlier, they're documentaries, and they seem to be more personal because of where I was after the pandemic, and then also going back to school at a Christian college. I got my MFA at Houston. At that time, it was Baptist University, and then I kid you not, they changed the name after so many years to Houston Christian University, and I think I was in that space of bringing more of my own faith into. I didn't even try to do it with 365 days in LA, but it happened. I think the earlier work, even though it touched on faith with one character, it still had some spiritual overtones because it was about the seven deadly sins, and each of
Mm-hmm.
the women represented the seven deadly sins. So it had a comical view of that, and so it was just cool to see people reacting to something old, and they were laughing or responding back to the character and like, no, she didn't do that to her sister. And I was like, oh, still have some, it was just weird. It was still having some reaction. So I just look at it like, I don't know if I would put that one out there, but maybe put it back
Yeah.
out there so people could get back to it. I don't know, but it'll
Yeah.
be interesting.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on completing projects and sharing
You know,
projects that are impactful to people, that are life changing, that people can see themselves in. Do you have anything next coming up? I know that you shared with me previously too that you have some workshops coming up.
yeah.
So share with the audience, like, what do you have coming next and how they can connect with you more?
Yes, thank you so much for that. I am a big advocate for people learning how to green light yourself. So being from Houston, I was outside of that entertainment hub. People always tell you to move, unfortunately. Houston's known for so many great things, but it's always been, unfortunately, a lot of people move for, filmmaking opportunities, TV opportunities, or, maybe not. Maybe they are like me. They try to make it work in the city that they are in, or they do move. They have the both of those examples. So I wanted to cover ground with a series of online workshops, and these courses are, so you want to be an author, so you want to be a filmmaker, and then one
Mm,
specifically that's a very in detail intensive, that just doesn't go over process, but it really goes into the nitty gritty of documentaries that are made, and then also the ones I made. It's putting your story front and center. So all of those are available in the form of, you can go live with me and get your questions answered, or you can also wait till they're in a vault. I call it the summer school vault, where they can get to it after everything's said and
Mhm.
done and it lives there. So I think it's really important, and it's a very good time of, this is the age of agency. So the more you know about putting yourself out there in a responsible way, of course, not just for, clout or anything like that, but if you believe that your story is worth sharing, which a lot of stories, if not all of them, are in different ways, but specifically these two are really catering to those who want to be filmmakers and authors. So all three of them are going to be available in August, but I have one for each month. So June, July, and all that information is on my website, which is eclecticallyu.com, or they can even go to MicoleWilliams.com, but they should be able to go and get to those courses that way. And then I got a new book coming out, so I'm really excited
Yay.
about that, getting back into the saddle, so to speak.
Yay. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
so they can also connect with you on those two websites. Is that the same? Is your Instagram or Facebook pages the same as well? Or are they different?
They kind of do the same thing. So my Instagram, that is more geared towards the writer filmmaker. The human in me is MK Willpower. And then the business side that really strictly kind of stays there is Eclectically You, and experience is there though. So it's Eclectically You Experience. So it's a little longer than the site. But yeah, in Facebook, I have a Facebook writer page that I do need to update. I'm not.
Felt that. I think mine are like hidden or something. I don't even know, but so I felt that for sure. Well, Micole, thank you so much for connecting with me, sharing your story, being transparent, creating the projects that you have created. So before we go though, I would like to ask you, do you have a word of encouragement for anybody who feels disconnected from God, or are uncertain about their purpose, or wanting to learn more for themselves about how to hear God? Do you have anything that you would like to share with them?
Definitely. I think acknowledging your truth is so important. The fact that you feel disconnected, the fact that you are trying to figure some things out is just a part of the human condition. We go through so many different emotions. So just making sure that you can validate, this is how I feel, this is my truth in the moment. But with acknowledging it is the first step. So the next step is, what can I do about it to be in a better place? And God is not a God of confusion. So I look at him as, he is the answer, and figuring out what it is that allows you to be connected and be able to hear him, getting into that space is really important. So whether it be a physical space in your house, maybe you need to go by the lake, maybe you need to go to the church, maybe you need to go take a drive, whatever you feel is going to be your ritual that you can commit to say, God, I'm making an appointment on my calendar to hear from you, because this is where I'm at in my life. I know that you created me for a purpose, and I just want to hear from you what that is. I will not move until I hear confirmation. And if you can meet me at this place at this
Mhm.
time, I'm not going to leave until I hear from you and get confirmation. I think that definitely can work wonders if you're in that space, and continuing that process, or whenever, like as an as need basis, is
Yeah,
something I would definitely encourage. And then stay in community one way or another. Don't think
yeah,
that you're in this alone. A lot of times that's how the enemy grabs a lot of us, is to make us feel like we're the only one going through this, or nobody cares about whatever we're going through. And just stepping out, helping other people in some way, it kind of gets you out of those funks. So that's the main thing too. Don't go through anything alone. Have your private time, have your personal time with God, but don't feel that you can't be in community, because that's kind of the thing that happens a lot of time, the isolation aspect of it. So get on out of there,
yeah.
get on out of that head space, and just find your people basically.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much,
Thank
Micole.
you, Courtney.
It was amazing. Such a beautiful testimony, conversation. I really loved and enjoyed everything that we talked about today. And if anybody else has loved and enjoyed what we have discussed and want to connect more with Micole and can watch How Do You Hear God, I think that you absolutely should. It's $7.99. It's $7.99 to rent, right?
Yes, yes.
So very super low cost. It's absolutely worth it if you ask me. I would get friends and family to work, watch it together, have those conversations and talk. So good for your women's group, good for your Bible study, good for just your friends or just your family. But definitely support her, definitely connect with her, definitely learn from her. This interview will also be paired with the article that you can find at courtneyarlesia.substack.com. So in the article, I will have all the information too, how you can connect with Micole more. So thank you again. And everybody else, I will see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Courtney.